Are we recording? Is this thing on?
Yes, it is. Welcome to RevOps 500, where we invite the world's top marketers to answer the tough questions facing growing organizations.
Ooh, sounds important.
I'm Sajeel Qureshi.
And I'm Gil Bates. Join us as we dive deep into the world of RevOps.
We'll be learning strategies and expertise from first-hand experience. RevOps 500 is sponsored by Computan. They provide technical and development expertise to growth-focused marketing teams.
Let's get started.
Hey everyone, Sajeel Qureshi here with another episode of RevOps 500. Today we have a very, very special guest that I'm really, really excited to be talking with. She's a supportive leader. She has a special talent for building up talented teams. She's a mentor. She's kind. She's courageous. She was granted the MB Women's Leadership Program Award in 2017, and she used to work at Profile by Sanford as a CMO, and now she's the co-founder of Jodder. Brooke Fitts, welcome to RevOps 500.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're excited that you're here. Anyways, let's just get right into it, Brooke. So, the first question I'm going to ask you is, what is one RevOps myth?
In the past several years working with franchise businesses and as it relates specifically to RevOps, I feel so many business owners are really looking for kind of that magic formula with RevOps. Tell me what CRM I need. Tell me how much money I should be spending in advertising. Tell me what should my customer support and ABM activity be in order to get some of that residual customer feedback. And at the end of the day, I think there isn't a magic formula. It's different for every business. And one thing that I feel is always missing from maybe that thought process or the myth is the actual people who should be helping me with these things. And so I think that that's really a myth is when entrepreneurs and business owners sit down to kind of build up that RevOps process and business line. I think that oftentimes the who is left out and we're so focused on the what. And so, and it's going to be different for everyone. When you bring in someone who's really strong on your business development side, I think that process might look a little bit different than if you bring some digital marketers in that are really strong or a really strong head of customer support. And so I think that process and that kind of setup within the RevOps looks a little bit different for every business. So I don't believe there's a magic bullet. I think every situation is unique. But I do think what's always missing from the conversation is the who versus the what.
So Brooke, let's talk about that a bit. So you're saying the who is missing. Are you mean like the people on the RevOps team itself, or who are that
I
kind
would
of thing?
say
Or
the type of people. And so when we know we need these resources, but oftentimes I think we forget to look at maybe the who they are is important, how they want to work is important. How are we going to maintain the who's in those roles? Because in today's marketplace, our people have proven that it's the most valuable part of our RevOps. And I think that when we take them out of the equation and kind of pigeonhole them into, I need this resource versus I need someone who wants to be part of the team and I need somebody who wants to be part of this end outcome. And I want to structure my business in a way that makes them a part of that process versus making them a resource of the process, if that makes sense.
yeah, so having the ownership over the goal of RevOps, whatever it is, and are you saying that is more important than even like the skills of the person, like just having the ownership of it all?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think skills can be taught. I
Yes.
think it's what business owners I feel should be looking for in kind of that missing piece is the type of individual. How do they want to work? How do they want to be part of the end outcome of what we're trying to accomplish? What type of work environment do they work best in? And how can I structure my RevOps to support that versus the other way around? Because at the end of the day, some of these resources will just continue to churn and churn and churn if we don't kind of flip it on its head and say, okay, who do I actually want in these roles? And how do I make the business work for them?
Got it. Wow, that's a that's an interesting way to look at it. That yeah, people always think about process or technology, but not necessarily the who is involved on the team and those sorts of things. So I mean, let's talk about you know Jodder or some of the things that you were doing at Profile by Sanford. I mean, what keeps you up at night technically right now in RevOps? Is there some sort of like technical issues that you just kind of are constantly battling with regularly?
Yeah,
Let us in on that a little bit.
yeah, I have a fintech background. I got started in
Huh.
fintech over 15 years ago, and really
Yes.
on the payment side, and helping fintech entrepreneurs get their businesses spun up. Worked in the credit space as well. Worked starting building products. There
Wow.
when I was just getting my teeth cut in the industry. And here I am 18 years later, and I would say the one thing that probably keeps me up at night is the payments portion of our model. You would think we'd have it figured out by now. But I think what it comes down to is there's so many options. Um, it's expensive to do, the cost of business is expensive. And then integration, right? Like when we're looking at our tech stacks, what's the best kind of RevOps from end to end, right? What's the best integration platforms, and how can I make them work the best together? And again, I think that comes back to the who can I have work alongside me as part of these decisions to make sure that it's not just me in a silo, in that I'm coming at it from a thoughtful place, and in
Mm,
one that has some other experience feeding into those decisions. So the things that keep me up at night I think are definitely on that backside, that payment side, making sure that not only from a business and a margin perspective, we're being thoughtful, but the end consumer, and making sure that our clients are feeling cared for, that it's not confusing, that we're making it very easy for them. I also always say I want it to be easy for them to quit. If I make it easy for them to
mm,
quit, I think it's real easy to also come back. And so making sure that as part of our strategy that we're very thoughtful, and you know what, if we're not living up to our number of the bargain, how can we make this a good experience for the customer as they exit, so that hopefully when we have things in a better light, that we can get them back and make that just as easy. So I think it's definitely that back end, that payment side. Recurring payments is something that we're looking to just get spun up here, to get Jodder piloted, which is a social media platform where we
right.
help small businesses write content, build content on their social platforms, which I felt was missing in the marketplace. There's so many great social media platforms, and I worked with so many great digital teams over the years, but it's almost getting to the point where you need a scientist to run our
Yeah.
programs. And I wanted something to be easy for an everyday person or an everyday social media marketer, as well as those entrepreneurs in fintech, as well as in franchising. There's a lot on the back of those business owners, and I wanted to provide a solution that would be easy for them, especially when those franchisors are spending so much money at providing great content, great resources, great assets for them to execute in their local markets, but yet it falls to the wayside. It's at the bottom of their to-do list. So wanted to seek out a solution that could help them actually execute, because I think that over and over I'm hearing again, it's not that there's not enough tools out there, it's not that there's not enough information on how to do this. It really comes down to, at the end of the day, I don't have time to execute all of the things in these types of small business models. And so I wanted to make it easy, and my business partner and I set out to make that easy through building Jodder, which is a social media platform built for small and medium sized businesses to execute their social media on their behalf. When we set out to look at how we could sleep at night for the payment side, we just started off piloting with invoicing. It was the easiest, simplest way to do it. We know it's clunky from our end. We know it's not ideal on the
Mm.
client side, and so we're trying to ramp up that recurring payments portion of our business, to kind of round out our pilot period here in the next 90 days.
So yeah, that's kind of a nice thing because RevOps, you're trying to tie in, sales, marketing, customer success, and if you have, then the commerce part gets lost, is what you're trying to say, right? Where people say, oh yeah, you can buy something maybe, but can you buy more? Can you get out easy? Can you not do it? And yeah, payments sometimes gets missed because it is a technical thing. You have to add that in and different payment models, payment types. You talked about recurring payments, like with Jodder, you're trying to do. Maybe it could be like a one-off thing too. It could be lots of different types of services that you're offering, right? So there's different kinds of payments in there. So yeah, tying that back into a RevOps strategy is something to consider. So how are you getting through that? I mean, are you do you have payments set up? Or you have some of it? You mentioned it's clunky to start with. What is the plan?
Yeah, so we're really starting to kind of discern on the platform, the client platform that we want to land with. So I've narrowed it down to three because there are lots out there,
Yeah.
and so we're rounding out those conversations this week. Um, Really looking at then some of those payment gateways. There's narrowed it really down into Stripes at the top of the list.
Sure.
And it's also just looking at is there a way where there's better margin on the payment side too, because it is expensive. It's expensive to do business. So just kind of looking at and crunching those numbers, and then also then on the technical side, making sure that we have a sound platform that can be integrated with our existing platform to make sure that our client has a good seamless experience through kind of jumping through these different portals and platforms, making it seamless for them.
Got it. Yeah. So I mean, like that's that's just you're in the decision phase. I mean, you talked about some payment providers and those sorts of things. It looks like you're getting pretty close on that.
Yeah, yeah, we're getting real close. Like I said, business doesn't stop for these decisions, and
No.
so we're getting by invoicing, and it's working out just fine on the back end. But we know we
Uh-huh.
can make that client experience so much better, and then operationally, just having that recurring payments part of your business is so vital just to keep the wheels moving and to keep things moving quickly.
So now, Brooke, when you talk about like adding commerce into RevOps, now you're kind of at the tail end of this process now. I mean, what would you tell businesses? Doesn't matter if they're small, mid market, enterprise. How could they tie in? Like something like purchasing in like a RevOps strategy.
Yeah, so I think really not doing it in a silo, it can get overwhelming really fast when you're looking at all of the options that are out there. There's a lot of tools, there's a lot of platforms. And I think based on your size of business, based on what your budget look like, those are all pieces of that process. But it gets overwhelming really fast. So I would suggest there's several other tools out there, other websites that actually do some of that work for you. So
Hmm.
or hiring somebody. We also did hire some research folks to come in and actually look at that competitive landscape. What were the tools that our competitors were using? Is there anything that we could learn from those platforms? What are they charging? Obviously, and making sure that um, we were understanding where we were fitting in that competitive landscape. And then taking some of the tools that our competitors were using is a good place to start. And then looking at those competitions. So breaking it down, and that's an easy or quick way to kind of find out where you fit in that market. If you are using, for example, if you're a bigger company and you need some of those bigger platforms, I will just use a Mailchimp, a HubSpot on that front end side,
Hmm.
Salesforce. If you're a larger company and are using those common SaaS tools, it's real easy right out of the gate to understand where that fits in your budget,
Sure.
understanding what types of resources I'm going to need to help run those platforms. But at the end of the day, if you're not in that space and you're really just starting off as an entrepreneur and small business, you got to get a little bit more scrappy and try and look for those tools that maybe the competition is using and start there, and then look to see what other platforms are kind of in that same space.
Got it.
And
Yeah. So
it's really
cross
easy to
price
talk about the big guys right out of the gate, right? They're tried, they're true, they're proven, but at the end of the day, might not necessarily fit for your business model.
fit. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, it's just kind of doing your diligence, making sure you got the right fit for the right budget is very important. So those are all, yeah, really solid tips for anybody going through that process, I'd imagine. Let's talk about the future of of RevOps a little bit. I mean, what where do you see like where do you see this whole thing heading? Like, I mean, this whole RevOps revolution, if you want to call it that. Where do you see it heading?
I think digital is where it's at. I think there's going to have to be better integrations instead of all of these kind of one-off silos of each of your
Sure.
marketing, sales, support. I think more integration, more seamless integration. I've been in organizations where those processes and systems are built natively. I've seen that work really well, but it also comes with its pain points too. You're then dependent on your own dev resources to make sure that that flow from all the way from sales to customer support is seamless. So you're then dependent on internal resources, and we know how challenging that has been. To again, it goes back to the who, making sure you have the who, not just the what.
What?
And so I've seen that work real well. I do believe SaaS it is the future. I think Chat GPT has put us in a new evolution of where these things are going. And I think it's only going to help escalate um, the resources being better, being more efficient in building out some of these systems and processes. And so when we talk about customer experience and how RevOps plays in that customer experience, I can see ChatGPT definitely being a big part of the future of building out that
Mhm.
experience. I've actually experienced some customer support that I know was built off of ChatGPT, and it was some of the best customer support and experience. It made me feel loved, and I knew it was coming from
A bot.
from a user. But it was sometimes almost better than that true human experience, right? So there's more control. There's a little bit more control over that customer experience when you're using those tools. So I love that we can make it feel more human. I love that we can provide a better customer experience. Some of the chatbots, I think, have gone by the wayside, unless they start using and evolving with some of what ChatGPT is bringing, or just really humanizing the experience. Because I think customers are expecting that now.
Yeah, it's almost like what you're saying is you have this future where it's a lot more digital and you have your obviously, you have your artificial intelligence, which can kind of help you with support 24/7, 365, something like a chat GPT you can build on top of that. Then you put the humans on top of it who, kind of will train that, that bot, to kind of do what you need it to do.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, that's an interesting thing. I mean, yeah, to see how something like chat GPT will play into RevOps. Because, it is sales, marketing, customer success. You can plug that all in and make it work, right? I mean, it's definitely something. Oh yeah. So I mean, let's talk a little bit about you now, Brooke. I mean, like, kind of take us back. How did you get started in? I mean, obviously, probably started in marketing, then evolved into RevOps. Now you're starting your own. You're in your own startup now. You're kind of bootstrapping things. I mean, how did you get started in this? How did we get to where we are now? I
Sure,
mean,
sure.
what's the
Yeah, I
story?
had a pretty colorful background. So
Let's hear it.
I did start off in marketing. I started off with a small advertising agency, cut my teeth there, moved over to the payment side, and really started building out credit and payment products. So I designed the backend system. So when customers would log into their credit or banking accounts, I would design those systems. And so
Oh,
very
nice.
understanding a lot about information architecture, user experience, digital experience. So I kind of got in at the beginning of that UX evolution, just getting started. And so I learned a lot there. Then went over to a very true startup. The company that I was working for had divested the credit part of our division, and that group then found an angel investor, and essentially we were developing a product to compete against our former product that we had built.
Wow.
So went true startup day one. We're buying desks, computers, toilet paper, and so I got that experience. Got to wear a lot of hats. I was a marketing manager, but doing all the things. So really great experience. I could recommend working for a startup for anyone. It just, you learn so much.
Yeah.
So I was very, very thankful that I had that opportunity. Worked very closely with development teams to build out these digital products. Worked very closely with the email and the ESP providers, lead drips. I mean, it was really at the beginning of that evolution, when people were just trying to figure out how do we get people online to our products and services. So learned a lot through that process. Then I moved over to leading product development for a company called carsforsale.com. And so just another, they had a lot of homegrown systems and tools in place, but didn't have a lot of the people and processes. And so then I got to help build a leadership team, build uh, requirements for products, help evolutionize their products. So that was a lot of fun. From there, I then went over to run operations for another payments system, startup payment system for a bank out of Kansas City. So again, a lot of color, went from marketing to product development, now leading operations on the payment side. And from there, I went to help one of the largest health organizations in the
Yeah.
Midwest, Stanford Health, build their digital and creative team. And so leading kind of
Wow.
the creative experience over at this healthcare system. From there, they had a franchise, health and wellness franchise called Profile by Stanford, and asked me to come over and help lead that crew. So was a chief marketing officer over there for a few years during COVID, which was interesting. But was
Yeah.
fortunate to get to work with franchisees all over the country. Had a great experience in understanding their business and trying to help them from not only a big brand experience, but also in those local markets. So learned a lot, was great. And then when Stanford decided to divest Profile last year, I decided that I was going to start a consulting business. And then through that process, my business partner and I found that there was a gap in the market for executing social media for small businesses. And so then set out to develop a system and a process and a service that could help them. And that's how Jodder came to life.
Wow. So I mean, that story is, long, winding, and so many different roles. I mean, which is nice. I mean, you've done, like you said, you've done marketing, you've done product development, you've got user acquisition background, startups, large, probably more bureaucratic organizations too. I mean, like, so you kind of you've run the gamut, as they say, right? So I mean, like that's, and now you got now you've got your own startup, which you kind of, you're kind of the co-founder of. So that is interesting. So like, I mean, how is it different, running your own place now versus being in those other types of roles? Are you feeling like more like you were back in the startup time in your career? Or are you feeling more like what's the vibe like for you on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think probably. Well, first of all, it's different not getting a paycheck, but and that's part of the process, right? Is diving in and being okay with that situation. And I knew what I was signing up for when I went this route. So, which makes it's kind of one of those things that if it's exciting, it makes you sick at the same time. It's probably the right thing. And so it's exciting. But I also think what's a little bit different is because of all of the experience I've had, not only with startups, but in that corporate environment, my network has expanded so much. And so that's also important is when you are in a startup space, you have to have a network of folks that you can reach out to, folks that can help you make connections. And so I think that that's really important. And so having the confidence that not only do I've had experience in building products and building businesses, but really, making sure that I felt comfortable and confident enough that we had a network of folks and businesses that we could reach out to and knew that we had a product that was viable to help them. So I think definitely having that network of folks this far in my career, and I think that corporate experience definitely helped make sure that I had a wide network of folks that I could work with and reach out to.
Yeah. So, you have you probably have a ton of different types of resources that you can kind of pull on, people you can pull on in different shapes and sizes. It's just startup, maybe it's like a different kind of people that you work with then. Then if you're in corporate marketing, it's a very different type of resources that you probably have access to. But yeah, having them both gives you a lot of flexibility. And you build products, so that's a different kind of skill set that you have, and that people know. So yeah, I mean that should help on paper. It should help you get those paychecks when they come in or something like that.
I hope so. I think industry is important too.
Yeah.
Typically you see a lot of folks just kind of stay in one lane and from an industry because that's where your network is at. I actually been fortunate to bounce around a little bit from payments and fintech, agency world, automotive, digital acquisition, healthcare. And so I also think working in different industries is very helpful not only do you learn something new, but you can usually share some of those lessons learned with the folks that maybe don't always,
Totally.
because you don't typically see them engage across those industry lines. But I think it's very important that we do. Oftentimes we go to user groups that's about our industry, but sometimes I think it's really helpful to kind of get outside of our industry to actually learn. So I think that that's also been helpful, is that I've been able to work in different industry and business lines.
Yeah, so you kind of see how the game is played in
Yeah.
different worlds, right? I mean, like, marketing cars is very, very different than marketing, hospitals or healthcare, right? It's just way different, sold differently, buying process is different, maybe it's a bit more stereotypically more aggressive and more in your face, business to consumer, those sorts of things. And then, yeah, you go to healthcare, which is much more passive and probably a bit more buttoned up and, it's a little bit more corporate-y. So, I mean, but yeah, if you know both, you can speak the language of both and know when to apply one school of thought, when maybe to apply the other, right?
And I also like the regulatory environments in each of those industries are very different,
Yeah.
too, especially in financial services. So
Or
um,
yeah.
I do have to be careful going from one to the next, that I'm not kind of holding on to those kind of regulatory things in my mind. In the digital space, it's all kind of the
Yes.
same. But when you get down into those industries, there are some unique, obviously, nuances. Healthcare, you got to think about HIPAA. In financial
Yes.
services, you got to think about risk and fraud. And so, though helpful, I always have to keep that a little bit in check, that we can do things a little bit differently on both sides of the lines.
Yeah, and then now that you're starting your own place, I mean, there are some regulatory, things depending on who your clients are, but it's
Yes.
probably not as much as like, something like, OMVIC or like some sort of like big,
Exactly.
dealership regulation or the fintech sector or something like that, or HIPAA. It's probably a little bit different.
Yeah, it definitely is. And in this space, which is interesting when it comes to like social content, I think it's good to know that when we're marketing for on behalf of a healthcare system or on behalf of a bank, that we have those things in mind. Obviously, not bringing actual patient information or client information in the mix, but keeping the information at a level that keeps everybody safe. It is definitely good to have in your back pocket when you're
Yeah.
soliciting to help them with
Help.
their social media.
All right. So Brooke, take me back, like say, let's go back in the past to when you were like in your like, education days, like, your formative years. What would you tell yourself, say, 15 years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago? What kind of advice would you give yourself going through this whole process, knowing what you know now?
I th- I think for sure when I started off, I think I was so my background was in multimedia web development.
Got it.
Uh,
Okay.
Digital changed so fast. I wasn't quite expecting how quickly the evolution of the web would impact my career. And so I think that when I set out in my mind thinking that, oh, I'm going to help develop websites and build out digital experiences online. I'm going to help technical teams and grow my career through technical teams is really where I thought I was going to grow. And so I think being more adaptable and understanding that even though I had set out on this path, that my path would actually go in a very different way. And
Mm.
just maybe embracing that a little bit more, that I had to learn new skills outside of what I was trained in order to be diversified in the changing environment. And so that was really important. And I did have to learn that along the way. Like, I'm not just a web designer, right? I've got to learn email. I've got to learn print design. That one was hard for me coming from a digital background. I got to learn
Yeah.
design. I've got to learn how to work with people. I've got to learn how to build teams. And so I think just understanding that where my headspace was at in what I was trained in, went a very different path. And I think had I embraced that a little bit sooner, I think I could have been more of a sponge and kind of picking up where how quickly I could have transgressed through that process. But looking back, I'm glad I went through it. I'm glad that I kind of had those speed bumps along the way, because it did help me grow, and it forced me to grow into other areas that I didn't necessarily that I wasn't necessarily educated in.
Got it. So, I mean, just kind of, you look at it more from like, you could diversify yourself a bit more, but, no regrets, things happen for a reason, all those sorts of things. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair for most people, right? If they probably would go back and tell themselves to pick up a couple of more skills or maybe embrace some different things. And then, but of course, most people don't live with the regret either because, you don't have a time machine. Nobody does, right?
Okay,
So it's,
that's right.
all right. So now, I mean, what about outside of work? I mean, I know you obviously know you're starting a business. You're at the kind of at the forefront of everything. I mean, do you have time outside of work? Do you make time for yourself outside of things? I mean, do you have that ability, that luxury at the moment, or
I do. I will say since I've gone on my own, obviously, my time is a little bit more my time in terms of when I'm
sure?
going to turn it on, when I'm going to turn it off, which I love. It's been great for my family. I've got three kiddos. I've got
Wow,
a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and they're all very, very active. And so
nice.
when I'm not working, which I love, I'm usually at their activities.
Got it.
And my husband also, he's very busy. He travels for his job, and so just we pick up the pieces. We're a great tag team, and really just I spend a lot of time with my family and going to all my kids' ball events and just kind of soaking up this time because I know it's short lived. So enjoying time with my family outside of work for sure.
Yeah, and that's always the toughest thing when you're starting a business or running it. You just making that time is almost impossible. So I mean, like that's it's good that you're making time for it. So Brooke, where can people learn more about you, your story? I mean, where can they connect with you?
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. So I LinkedIn is probably the best place to learn about me. I'm actually in the process of getting my LinkedIn profile revamped with the launch of Jodder, which within the next 60 90 days, we should be making an announcement and really getting a big push out there to let people know who we are and who we can help. So definitely on LinkedIn, you can find me Brooke Fitts, Fitts. And you can check out Jodder. It's jodder.com.
All right, that's perfect. And just really appreciate you coming in and breaking bread with us a little bit on RevOps for different kinds of businesses. The thinking about the who versus the what in RevOps. That's been that was a huge eye opener just for me, and I hope that you had a good time on the show too. Just really appreciate you making the time, Brooke, to come in and chat with us today.
Thank you. I think RevOps, this is great content. I'm glad you're getting it out there so thanks for all the work that you do. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, of course. And yeah, if anybody listening, if you guys learned something today or maybe laughed a little, just yeah, give someone else a shout, tell them about the podcast, and yeah, that's it. So thanks again, Brooke, for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
This has been another exciting episode of RevOps 500, and we'll see everybody next time. And that wraps up another episode of RevOps 500. Thanks for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at RevOps500.com. RevOps 500 is sponsored by CompuTech, providing technical and development expertise to growth-focused marketing teams.